cross-border shipping has really changed dramatically over the last 10 years. And it's just become more accessible to everybody. And one of the biggest myths that we've bust is that somehow you have to be of some certain huge size before you can even consider cross-border delivery. And that's just not the case.
Welcome to another episode of Selling Strategies. So today my guest is Jonathan Matchett. Do you just want to give a quick intro in terms of who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Kieran. Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan Matchett. I'm Senior Vice President at Landmark Global UK, and we help sellers with shipping and clearance and delivery from the UK worldwide.
Yeah. And you guys are also a Walmart partner, is that right?
We are. We've been a partner really right the way through 2023, and we help Walmart and indeed their customers with shipping to the US and to Canada and now to Mexico.
First question. So I'd like to start by touching on some myths. So what are some common myths around cross-border selling that, maybe like SMB businesses might have, for example?
Yeah, I think, I'll start with a reality, which is cross-border shipping has really changed dramatically over the last, 10 years. And it's just become more accessible to everybody. And one of the biggest myths that we've bust is that somehow you have to be of some certain huge size before you can even consider cross-border delivery. And that's just not the case. It's now really been opened up, democratized to every seller of every size. If I think back, 10 years to some of the pioneers, the larger sellers such as an ASOS, they really helped develop that cross-border shipping expertise from the likes of Landmark Global and others that then leveled the playing field for everyone. Everyone could really use the same technologies and the same delivery solutions as even the largest sellers. And then I'd say the second myth that has been bust is that somehow that there was some linear decision between either using slow postal or expensive express, and the market has changed radically so that Landmark Global and others offer a range of shipping services which are fast enough, which are low cost, and most importantly that are tracked. And then maybe one other myth I'd say is busted is that somehow you need to link your international shipping to your domestic contract. That's no longer the case. There are easy ways of getting really even quite small daily volumes of cross-border parcels to a central point with a specialist to then ship those forward to the world. So what I'd say is just consider those myths busted, and open up your eyes to the opportunity of cross-border shipping.
Interesting. So even if I'm doing, say, 20, 30 orders a day, you're saying accessing the US market and it's possible to keep that as a cost-effective option?
Absolutely. I mean, the one consideration which is we've overcome is how do you manage that first mile? And we've got the means now to ensure a pickup of even, the sort of quantities that you talked about, the 10, 20 a day. And what we've quite typically seen is that those sellers who start with 20 a day, well, they're growing their cross-border traffic, and they become the 50 a days, the 200 a days. And that's where, even some of those big household e-commerce seller names, started with relatively low volumes of international volumes that have, grown into enormous cross-border, sales opportunities.
So those are some of the positives, the lay of the land as it is at the moment. But despite that, I suppose there are still challenges, particularly for UK sellers with Brexit and getting access to the US market. So can you talk through what that looks like at the moment?
Yeah, sure. There are challenges and equally there are opportunities. So you mentioned Brexit, and there's no doubt that selling got harder to the EU, following Brexit. Whatever spin you put on it, there was more red tape, there was more changes. And in fairness, those have been superseded almost by some, tax changes across Europe, IOSS, some sellers will be familiar with. And what I would say is, don't let those put you off cross-border selling. There are people out there, specialists, whether they be shippers like Landmark, whether they be fiscal partners that you may know, the Avalaras of this world. We can introduce sellers to those also. Tax is there as a challenge, but it's one which is really quite, easy and practical to navigate. The EU that you mentioned is one market, but of course, there are other equally attractive markets for sellers. Ireland, yes, while it's in the EU, almost feels like an extension of UK domestic that sellers sometimes start with. And then the US is where we've really seen an explosion of growth across this last year and of course in previous years.
And when you say an explosion of growth, so do you mean in terms of UK sellers accessing and growing
exactly
in that market?
that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the US has always been popular just because of a shared language, just because it's such a huge market in terms of it has 300 million consumers. There's a lot of demand there for quality, products from the UK. It's also helped by the fact that the de minimis is quite high. So we mentioned, tax and duty, that threshold under which duty is not applicable for the US is really quite high, $800, roughly £630. So that means that market is quite uncomplicated up to quite a high average order value. And so long as sellers are, sticking within Nexus requirements for the US, that same threshold applies for tax. So, the US becomes this, huge, relatively easy to access opportunity, and could end up being higher margin opportunities for sellers into the US than even, dare I say it, domestically, certainly to Europe. At the same time, the US is a huge market, but it's a huge geography. So what I would say to sellers is, make sure that you've partnered with someone who really understands the US as, a single destination, but one with multiple gateways and multiple service options, and really understand, where your consumers are to best service them with the right service for them.
Now, we know that one of the avenues for accessing that US market is, of course, Walmart. There's a lot of UK sellers as well as US sellers who are excited about the opportunity there. So can you just walk us through what is it about Walmart that is exciting UK sellers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with Walmart, really for, right the way through 2023. And I think they've been open to, sellers on their marketplace since 2009, I want to say. Before I even come back to Walmart, what I'd say is to any seller is consider marketplaces as really a great complementary alternative channel to direct to consumer. It can, in many ways, be a lower risk option for testing new markets, for finding, where your products sell best. And what Walmart's done is to really make it as simple as possible for sellers to get up and trading on that marketplace, and indeed, working with Landmark Global and the likes, make it as easy as possible to ship to those marketplaces.
So I just want to dig into that a bit more. When you say Walmart make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, so we've been trading with, helping sellers on Walmart on their US marketplace, but also Canada marketplace, and then most recently Mexico marketplace. And what Walmart has done is really to establish a seller program and support not just a destination, but also with a UK team to really guide sellers through how to get approved. You need to get approved, but that's a good thing because it means that the quality threshold is kept high. And then really to offer a lot of advice about listing for success, about promotions, and about what categories work best and what products and brands work best. And Walmart, it almost is perfect fit with their business model because they're interested in really expanding choice for their consumers, for their buyers through new brands, through new products, and that category assortment is really vast there. So whatever you're selling, there's going to be a place for you on Walmart Marketplace and indeed a number of other marketplaces.
And what about Walmart's cross-border programs? Do they have similar things in place there? If I'm a UK seller, I want to sell on Walmart in the US, do they have programs that will kind of assist you along that road as well?
They do. We've been involved with Walmart, right the way through 2023, and what they've done is to offer, all their sellers a uniform and really compelling seller rates for shipping cross-border. And that's from the UK to the US, but it's from the UK to many other marketplaces as well. And they've just simplified that pricing, simplified that setup. And then really most importantly, and it's one of the key considerations for cross-border selling and shipping, is that seller, your integration with Walmart Marketplace, they are taking on that job to ensure that flow of data comes back to Landmark Global, whoever's doing the shipping. That data, by which I mean not just the product information and the receiver information, but the HS code classification and everything to ensure seamless cross-border customs clearance. Walmart are taking care of that data flow back to your shipping partner to then move that parcel forward successfully.
So I just want to talk more broadly about marketplaces. So let's say, for example, I run a successful e-commerce store. I've got my own website. I'm selling on eBay and Amazon successfully, but I'm looking to expand further internationally, looking at alternative marketplaces. Are there any that you'd recommend that, particularly make cross-border selling easy into various markets?
Yeah, there are so many. I mean, that's just been a really exciting and phenomenal change over recent years. So you mentioned Amazon and eBay. I got a lot of love for eBay in particular. But at the same time, there are many marketplaces around the world. So I like Rakuten for Japan. I like Fnac for France. I like Volga Closet for the Middle East. And again, work with not just those marketplaces, but work with a delivery partner who can really give you a great shipping service, delivery service, clearance services with local variations for those markets too, in those instances, Japan, France, Middle East. Alternatively, consider maybe a slightly lower risk model, which is to work with one or several of the marketplace aggregators. So, wholesale models into, two clients of ours, Patemba, Boulevard Online, they can help you by, taking care of, in Patemba's case, 80 integrations into global marketplaces. So, they'll take on that complexity of those integrations and those data flows, and you've got a single integration with them. And that could really open up, give you insight into where your products sell best, not just in one marketplace, a Walmart, a Wish, a Frugo, but in 80 marketplaces around the world.
Say I'm running my successful store and I'm selling on these channels. I'm looking to expand further, add more marketplaces. I guess one of the fears that I might have is just the growing complexity. Are there, as some of your clients grow with you, are there recommendations you make in terms of, investments in tech and just in order to simplify that process?
Yeah, I would say the whole marketplace has almost democratized, if I can use that word. It's just become so much more accessible for even quite small sellers, and through a tech stack like Linworks, just to have access not just to a single delivery solution or a single marketplace solution, but many. And between the partnership with Linworks and Landmark Global and others, it just allows a plug and play with a single integration to access the world for accessing services, for printing labels, and then for shipping those parcels to your consumers worldwide.
Are there any insights that you could share about US consumers that UK sellers should be aware of, or are they generally the same?
Yeah, what we've seen is that US consumers want essentially the same as UK consumers. They're increasingly looking for quality in products rather than quantity. We've seen that shift over recent years. And then secondly, we've seen the shift towards socially responsible buying. So they want to make ethical decisions in terms of products, but also shipping solutions. But if you're a UK seller, a brand that's authentic and has got products that those US consumers want, then there's definitely an opportunity for you there.
So just swinging back round to some of the success stories, you were talking about how it is still possible for even lower volume sellers to set up an international program. So are there some of your clients that you could speak to who have that sort of setup?
Yeah, I can think of really a few great examples recently. So, and what was a surprise and really exciting for me is they weren't always the most obvious merchandise categories. So we've been shipping from January 2023. We've been shipping for a UK-based online tools and hardware seller, 50 to 70 orders a day from from UK to US. And that's fantastic just to see that category that I wouldn't even have guessed before along that routing. Then similarly, we've been shipping for a printed T-shirt seller, music T-shirt seller from I think March this year. Again, sort of 40, 50 a day from the UK to the US, and it's just opened up growth opportunities for those and many other SME sellers as well as large sellers. I mean,
it might be interesting and useful to viewers just to walk through what the setup of that process would look like. Could you give us some insight there?
Yeah, it's really easy. I mean, we can either get in touch with Landmark Global and we can introduce you to those marketplaces, or indeed contact Walmart Marketplace yourselves directly. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a not very onerous approval process, and that's just to ensure that there's a fit and that there's a quality threshold. And really the onboarding process is fast. They make it as seamless, as easy as possible. And I said that single integration means that as well as for listing and selling, that integration is the same for ultimately for that flow of data and for shipping. So it could, it's never been easier than it is now.
Okay. Right, last question. What future trends do you foresee in cross-border selling moving forward?
Yeah, one that we've seen really grow this year and are expecting to continue, much more going forward is localization. So what I mean by that is when you're thinking of selling cross-border, to consider what that local consumer destination wants, that they want a website which is translated into their language. And that could be, with, some subtleties about, say the website reading right to left, for example, in some countries. And that extends through to payment methods that are relevant and specific to those markets. And then similarly, even in the pre-purchase marketing, in the post-sale, by which I mean delivery and customer service experiences, that those are localized to those consumers in those countries. So that's the first big trend we're seeing, an increase in localization. An extension of that is really the demand for fully landed cost. And by that, I mean that as a seller, you're able at the checkout within the web cart to not just calculate the full cost, including duty and tax, but also to collect those monies and indeed to pay those monies to the relevant fiscal authorities. And that sounds more daunting than it is, but what it's done is to really bring together the seller community, but also the technology community who's offering fully landed costs, and indeed shippers such as Landmark Global who can help guide you through that process of fully landed cost. And then I'd say another big trend that we're seeing, and this might not seem new for sellers in the UK, which is PUDO, by which I mean the ability to have your parcel delivered to a parcel shop or to a locker. And that feels pretty mature in the UK, but what we've done at Landmark Global is to really expand that across the whole of Europe, so PUDO across the whole of Europe. And we're now pioneering really opening that up in the US, where it's still 2% of deliveries, so a long way to go. But also other markets, the Middle East, Israel, Australia. So PUDO is certainly something that we see growing, pick up, drop off. And then lastly, what I would say is, the biggest thing we're seeing is that it's still growing. It's that you might think of the UK as a mature e-commerce market, but it's really only 2-3% of the global opportunity. So we would say it's never too late to start. But if you're already shipping globally or just thinking about getting started, it's not too late. Come and talk to us, and we'd be happy to help you ship from the UK to the world.
Brilliant. What a great positive note to finish on, Jonathan. I appreciate you coming down today.
Thanks very much. Likewise. Mello, can you take a picture? One still picture.
Hold on.
Ready? Yeah.
Yeah.